Cheryl, Kalish Gordon from Rabobank. Great to have you with us again here on Flow.
Hi, Ricky.
Now, the report you've put out just recently about the bumper harvest that's coming up for the winter crop. Let us go into the details of what that's projecting.
Yeah, look, we're expecting 52.9 million metric tonnes this year, and what's extraordinary about that, I guess, is that it backs on to last year's bumper crop, meaning that for the first time ever we'll have 100 million tonnes, or more than 100 million tonnes produced in Australia in a 2-year period. So a really sound and lovely backup story to last year's great harvest.
Yeah, so it looks like whilst the levels are still low, they're well above the 5-year average.
Well, the levels are only 5% down on last year, so, and taking into account that last year was a bumper and second highest on record, we really can't complain. And as you point out, still 25% above the 5-year average as our total winter crop volume that we're expecting.
Now, I think from memory, the canola story, it's being told over and over again, but it's pretty positive in this report as well about where things are heading on canola.
Yeah, look, it's been a great year for canola in Australia. Expanded plantings, good early rain to help good establishment of canola in those key canola growing regions, and good rain throughout the season on the most part. So we're expecting a record canola crop of about 5.16 million tonnes. That's 10% up on last year, and almost 50% above the 5-year average.
Now, I think I've got this right, that there was some projections in the report as well about prices looking pretty positive across some of the winter crops into future years as well. Have I got that right?
Yeah, well, look, certainly this year looks promising. If we look at what's happening globally, that's really going to support our pricing here in Australia. So something like wheat, we expect that globally to trade up about 15% on last year, which was a good pricing year in itself. And that's because we've got really low stocks globally, and particularly out of North America. We didn't have a resupply this season, particularly in the prairies, those northern areas of the US and into Canada. And so the market really has a squeeze on wheat, which is going to support our pricing over the year ahead. But what's more important, I guess, about that is that we'll be really looking very closely at what happens in terms of resupply in 2022, because without a really perfect situation in production across the globe next year, we're still going to see prices that are elevated. If production comes in as a really great season internationally, of course, we'll have pressure on prices and it'll bring it down. But with the rebuilding of stocks and ongoing strong demand, we expect that the pricing globally should sit above averages even after an excellent season next year, if that were to happen.
Yes, that's right. If it were to happen, we don't know yet what the weather's going to do. We never know till the next day sometimes. But the Bureau seems to be reasonably optimistic that things are looking pretty good on the weather front. We're not heading immediately into a drought by the looks of it.
That's right. Indications are that, La Nina could re-engage, about a 70% chance at the moment. Of course, that means a wetter system for southeast Australia, but it's a drier situation for the likes of North America and challenges in South America as well. So if that were to re-engage, we really would have a situation that would challenge the resupply next year in terms of grains.
Right, and this report that just came out, that's is it an annual report that Rabobank does, or is it how often do you come up with that one?
Look, we come to the market in May and present a view on what we think is being planted and our expectations on the back of that. And then in October we forecast the volume. So twice a year we come into the market and provide our view on what's happening. In terms of the production, the pricing, but also on the input side of things. And that's where there's a really interesting story and a story that, isn't necessarily positive for the grain sector this year, in that prices, of course, for anyone that's on farm and buying inputs like fertiliser and agchem will know that those prices have already increased remarkably, and the outlook is not for a correction downwards of any significance over the next 12 months.
Yeah, and I gather that's partly driven. We traded about that last Friday on air about the fuel shortage, the fuel inputs required to generate the fertiliser. There's such demand as the world gets firing up again that's one of the major drivers of the spike in fertiliser prices.
Yeah, so issues with gas supply in Europe have challenged the production of fertiliser in that region, but then there's also challenges in Asia and particularly China in terms of the production of glyphosate and urea, and that of course means there's a supply issue at a time when demand is very strong because of the high pricing of grains, and farmers around the world, including Australia, are responding to those high prices and wanting to be prepared to take advantage of them and get next year's crop in, as well as what they've done this year is demand extra to help support the crop in its growing season.
Well, that's always swings and roundabouts with markets, but it's great to chat with them about them with you. Cheryl Kalish-Gordon from Rabobank. Thanks for your time with us today.
Thanks, Ricky.